Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Asim Karim and welcome to my YouTube channel Think Deep. My topic today is part 2 of my lecture on humanism and repulsive humanism in Muhammad Hanif's Red Bird. I discuss repulsive humanism today with reference to Edward Said's deconstructive thoughts on humanism. I also intend to take it up from anti-humanist point of view. Please subscribe for more videos and seminars on research and Pakistani literature. Let's proceed to the discussion. I would like to begin with a recap of part 1 of my lecture. Redbirds, as I discussed in part 1, presents intensely disagreeable aspects of the American and local population of an unnamed third world Muslim country. If Americans are guilty of duplicity, brutality, and exploitation, the locals are guilty of greed, ineptness, a sense of absolute dependence on US aid, and corruption. Therefore, both sides are represented as seriously negative. Fundamentally, as I discussed in part 1, Red Birds is an ambivalent novel because it gives us opposing and contradictory perspective on humanism. On the one hand, it argues for broad humanist generalization, like desire for human perfectibility and moral relativism. But it also, on the other hand, it offers an unpleasant humanist vision of human centrality. This indicates that while humanism is the text's dominant focus, it is ultimately repulsive. It is repulsive because human predominance is engaged in destructive and exploitative processes. Recap of humanism. As discussed in Lecture 1, or Part 1 of the lecture, in fact, the essence of humanism is human primacy or human centrality in the face of metaphysical explanations of the universe. Humanism may also be interpreted as an outlook or style of thinking that values humans over supernatural beings. Importantly, religious rights organizations claim that evolution and not creationism is the core of humanist thought, and that humanism began with the rejection of God. In actuality, most humanists value a global perspective and practice non-absolute ethics. Repulsive humanism. As discussed or stated in Lecture 1, repulsive humanism is not in practice to theoretically explicate or interpret human behavior. Instead, we have such concepts as anti-humanism, transhumanism, and posthumanism. Collectively, they seek to challenge the anthropocentric view of human centrality in the world. Transhumanism, for instance, focuses on how technology might improve human sensory, emotional, and cognitive dimension and increase life expectancy. Thus, the value of technology has been emphasized over and above human cognitive or emotional capabilities. However, Edward Said's thesis concerning the misrepresentation of humanism contains the implication of a dark side of humanism that has not been focused in the elite representation of humanist culture. Mitchell's analysis, as referred in the next slide, also confirmed Said's understanding of something dark, something abominable in humanist traditions. The question is, how can repulsive behavior be further explained? I attempt to read it through Edward Said's deconstructive reading of humanism. I also extend it to the debates on anti-humanism. In his last work, humanism and democratic criticism. Edward Said is strongly critical of grand universalization of humanism. He deconstructs some of them to make scope for alternative thinking about what constitutes humanism in the contemporary conflict-centered world. He takes it as a process representing both sides of the coin, that is, the representations, achievements, and misrepresentations, more as a democratic system that challenge the universal elite culture of inclusion and exclusion. Mitchell, in his explication of Said's argument, repeats the same that humanism for Said was always a dialectical concept, generating opposition in him, opposition between feeling of admiration and disgust, an admiration for the great monument of civilization and disgust at humanism's underside of suffering and oppression, that, as Benjamin insisted, might make them monuments to barbarism as well. In this context, portraying the repulsiveness of both sides of boundaries contradicts the elite humanist practice of what Said called inclusion and exclusion. And in the backdrop of the post 9/11 war on terror rhetoric, it questions the elite ideal of humanitarian West versus the brutish and cruel East. Besides, the repulsiveness of American duplicity reveals the underside of being civilized and cultured in the war against the so-called Dark East. As a result, the negative characteristic of both sides could also be interpreted as democratic because they erode the border between the dominant West and the dominated East. Now, is it anti-humanist too? In the first place, anti-humanism is not about hating humans. Instead, it is the reversal of anthropocentrism, where everything from maternal instinct to self-conception is understood as creation of discourses and social processes. Now, war is a wide social and political setting in the novel that can be attributed to the repugnant sentiment and behavior. While devastation and power go hand in hand with American military strategy against third world countries, the local reaction in terms of greed and money-mindedness is the result of a broken country and broken economy of a shattered nation. Hence, we can take war as a decisive social factor or political factor behind human performance and repugnancy of human attitudes. But there is just another side to consider while attempting to comprehend the novel's anti-humanist perspective. It is connected to a profound and ongoing process of deepening the dichotomies between the first world and the third world, which has handed the power of devastation to the first world while leaving the third world to suffer in terms of human development and enlightenment. Therefore, it is impossible even conceive of reverting to the canons of humanism if we do not consider social setting as drivers of human behavior. Additionally, the novel provides insight into anti-humanism as perceived through many historical lenses. Third word has been used historically to signify a decline in society's ideals in education, culture, and technology, which have a direct impact on modern human behavior. So, what we see in the novel is that war has exposed the decadence in a third Muslim country, where, as mentioned previously, the lack of educational and technological advancement impair the public ability to counter the most advanced technological warfare or assert oneself in response to post war circumstances. This behavior is now consistent with a culture of dependency on the developed world for fundamental requirements. Thus, the novel prompts us to consider the political, cultural, and historical forces that shape human conduct in third world nations. From the American side, the historical context of the War on Terror is a part of new colonialism, as studies have suggested. And imperialism has all along been viewed in terms of dominance, hegemony, power, subversion, and exploitation. Hence, imperialism informs the behavior of the technologically advanced country against a country with meager resources. But this policy of power dominance has its price in the form of behaving repulsively and blending political, economic, and academic policies to gain power over the world. It primarily speaks of the offensive performance of a colonial power on a large scale. In conclusion, it is encouraging to observe how Pakistani English language widening narrative concerns to incorporate collective human behavior and its conflicts.